Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Real Talks, Dominate Real Estate. I'm Charlie Bengel.
And I'm Eyerusalem Meaza. Grab a cup of coffee and let's make your real estate career better.
Happy Monday, Eyerusalem. Always good to see you. What's in the news today?
Happy Monday. The Federal Reserve voted Wednesday to keep its benchmark interest rate near zero. This will keep the cost of the loans down until the economy starts to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. The Fed also announced last Wednesday, that it would be extending its lending and credit initiatives until the end of the year to help make it easier for Americans to get a loan. The Fed's key benchmark rate is not directly tied to mortgage rates, but it often indirectly influences them. The federal funds rate is what banks charge one another for short-term borrowing. That does not reflect the exact rate that consumers pay. Interest rates are currently low, but the challenge is that lending standards have gotten much stricter. Today, Cap Feedsnay, chief economist at LendingTree, told CNBC, banks are tightening standards pretty aggressively because they are concerned that the damage to the economy is going to be long-lasting. The Federal Reserve is closely monitoring the economic impact of the pandemic and has vowed to use its full range of tools to support the economy in this challenging time. In mid-March, the Fed started buying treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. MBS yields track treasuries, so both types of purchases are putting downward pressure on mortgage rates. Housing Wire reports, mortgage rates have reached all-time lows in recent weeks. The 30-year fixed-rate mortgage dipped below a 3% average in mid-July. The Fed reportedly may also adjust its purchases of treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities that could nudge already low long-term rates even lower. The central bank expects to keep its federal funds rate near zero until it is confident that the economy has weathered recent events and is on track to achieve its maximum employment and price stability goals, its statement read. In other news, home prices continue to accelerate across the country, with the national average median home price hitting an all-time high in July, reaching nearly $350,000, reflecting the strength of the housing demand amid the pandemic, according to the Realtor.com's July monthly housing trends report. July's listing price growth of 8.5% marks the largest leap in median listing prices since November 2018 and equates to a $27,000 increase over the last year. Northeastern metros have shown resilience, with properties selling more quickly than last year, an improving rate of newly listed properties, and a strong price growth. Nationally, homes are selling in an average of 60 days, the same as last year. Low inventory remains a problem for homeowner hopefuls. The number of homes for sale across the nation was down 33%, or 440,000 listings compared to a year ago. July's inventory decline is an acceleration from June, when listings declined by 27.4%. The coronavirus has impacted every corner of the United States, but it hasn't hit every area equally or at the same time, said Daniel Hale, Realtor.com's chief economist. The U.S. housing market performance is closely mirroring COVID's path, which is providing clues into what we can expect for various markets in the months to come. She added, after being particularly hit in March and April, the new coronavirus cases remain stable in the Northeast, and we're seeing buyers return to the market in force. If the same trend continues, follows in the South and Midwest, where outbreaks continue to rise, we could see a flurry of activity well into the fall, especially as schools delay their openings. Much of the days on market improvement is being driven from the Northeast, where buyers are steadily scooping up properties 6 days faster than last year. Zestimates and iBuyers have been around for years now, but have real estate agents embraced them? A new survey from real estate software firm W&R Studios indicates that answer so far is a pretty firm no. W&R Studios, whose flagship product is comparative market analysis software Cloud CMA, fielded the survey 2020 survey of best practices for CMAs and listing presentations online from May 18 to May 31. The company sent the survey to its 298,520 Cloud CMA agents and broker subscribers, of which 3,325 completed the survey. Survey respondents hail from 46 states nationwide. The survey, which has a margin of error plus or minus 2%, found that on average, the minimum number of comparable properties agents use in a CMA is 5, and the maximum number is 11. The vast majority of respondents use sold, active, and pending listings as comps. Less than a quarter used expired or withdrawn listings. Nearly all respondents, 95.5%, used their multiple listing service to find comps, while 27.9% said they use CMA software to find comps. Just over a quarter said they use tax records to find comps. Nearly 3/4 of survey respondents, 72.3%, said that they distribute their CMA to a client at a listing presentation. Agents overwhelmingly choose to distribute CMAs in person, 88.1%, while 65.3% choose to distribute them via email. Nearly 2/3 of survey respondents said that they seldom or never include Zestimates in their CMA report, while a similar share said that they seldom or never include iBuyer information in their CMA reports. An even higher share of respondents, 67.8%, said that they consider Zestimates to be slightly inaccurate or very inaccurate. Only 1.4% thought Zestimates were very accurate. This is perhaps not surprising given that the industry rhetoric often pits against the computer algorithms on which Zestimates and iBuyer offers are based, though some industry players, including Zestimates, parent Zillow, have emphasized that agents can use both to make themselves look better by comparison. Agents may also want to just avoid adding too many elements to an already tough conversation. More than half of the survey respondents said that the most common objection they heard from sellers at a listing presentation was pricing, followed by commission. If an agent didn't win a listing after a listing presentation, the most common reason why was that seller went with another agent, followed by seller didn't agree with suggested list price. While the vast majority of survey respondents said that they have never done a remote or virtual listing presentation, 51% said that they were very or extremely likely to do one in the next 6 months. As seller behaviors have changed over time, including the recent global pandemic, so too have the ways to conduct a listing presentation. Remote or virtual listing presentations might become the new normal, the survey report said. Charlie, what's going on with rates?
Thanks, Eyerusalem. Rates remain unchanged from last week, with 30-year fixed purchase rates at 3 1/8, 30-year jumbo rates at 2 7/8. FHA and VA rates are 2 3/4. These rates are complements of PNC Mortgage in the DC metropolitan market. What's going on with the market, Eyerusalem?
The Hampton Roads, we saw 791 new listings hit the market, 793 properties go pending, and 772 properties sold. In the last week in the Washington metro area, within 30 miles of the White House, we saw 1,340 new listings hit the market, 1,430 go pending, and 1,136 sold. Back over to Charlie with our special guest.
Thanks, Eyerusalem. Special guest today, Coach Amy Lassen. Amy, always good to see you, and happy Monday.
Happy Monday, everyone.
So I want to talk farming today, but some of the news that Eyerusalem was just reading I found was really interesting, and I was digging into this graph as she was trying, or as she was reading it, and I thought it was interesting that only 40% of realtors include client testimonials in their CMA. Now, hopefully the other 60% send it via some sort of a pre-listing book, maybe, but I'm wondering if perhaps they just don't use them as part of the listing process.
Right.
So I think I want to dig into this, this graph maybe later on this week, because I think that there's some interesting things to discuss. And she was also saying that the two biggest objections are at the listing appointment are price. Mm-hmm. Not a huge surprise, but I do wonder how many agents are asking their sellers before the appointment, hey, so what do you think you want to ask for your price? Or are we just not asking the question and then getting to the appointment and then running into a problem? And then the second objection is commission, which is not, a huge surprise. But I'm going to reread that article that Eyerusalem just went over, because I think that there's some things that we could probably talk about in the future a little bit.
Oh, I love this idea of talking about pricing. I think this would be a really valuable show.
Awesome. Good. So let's plan to discuss more about pricing, objections, and whatever else we come up with between now and Wednesday. On Wednesday, and then a quick preview for those watching on Friday. I have an interview with Kevin Bailey. He is the Community Title Network, which is our affiliated title company. He is their DC-based attorney. So we'll be catching up with him on all things DC, real estate, title, pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. But for the remainder of today, let's talk a little bit about farming. We hear, I think, all the time from coaching clients, they'll get on and they'll say, you know what, so-and-so in my office is killing it with a farm. I want to start a farm, right? And more than likely, that was not one of the lead sources identified on the business plan, right? More than likely, the lead sources that are on the business plan are not quite at a level 10, right? Realtors like to pivot and like to, see the shiny penny and go and investigate that, as we all know. So let's pretend, for the purposes of this conversation, however, that they're good, right? It is an appropriate time to add a lead source, right? And they're like, hey, I'm thinking about farming, coach. What do you think?
Right.
Where would you start?
Oh, wow. What a setup. That's not where I was going to begin today. So where I would start is by asking if they'd done their math, and then I would walk them through the math.
Okay.
And I'm happy to do that. But what I was hoping, Charlie, we could also talk about, because, hey, everybody, we've talked about farming before. On the allegianceway.com, there's a very detailed step-by-step show, 31 minutes, on geographic farming and all the math. All right. So anybody wants to check that out, that's there. But Charlie, I also wanted to talk about, as I often do, step back and talk about mindset a little bit.
Sure.
Because there are short-term types of, not short-term, there are make money now types of sources of business, and there are longer term. And one of the things I say is, you don't put peach pits in the ground if you need a peach pie by Friday. Like, that's just not how, and
I like
if you
that.
really take the farming analogy, like, it's a perfect word for it. Farming a neighborhood is very similar to farming peaches. It's a slow thing. Water, pulling the weeds. No, that sounds terrible. I don't think there's any weed pulling. But water, fertilizer, like, you've got to nurture your farm, right? You got to put things into it, and it will take time. The thing that I want to point out, though, is it doesn't make it something that you should be afraid of. And the truth is, even your make money now sources need a lot of nurture. And the nurture may even be, the time spent may even be in growing your own skill. All right. So I think now is the time to start believing in excellence. And maybe that is not the good news this morning on the show, because what you were hoping was I had brought magic beans, and they don't exist.
Right.
That's what I'm here to tell you, is magic beans aren't real. So if you would take my advice that you are capable of learning, you are capable of becoming a more extraordinary professional. And Charlie, I was listening to the book Influence, and they were talking about how you can influence consumer behavior either by implying that there's a value, like there's a deal, or by simplifying the decision-making process.
Okay.
If you can simply save someone's brain cells and make their buying decision easier, that is also a way to have influence. And so I was thinking about our farming show, and I was thinking, what does that look like in farming marketing? And I think if you would start to provide quality, and we can talk about what you're sending, if you would start to send really quality stuff, and people say, oh, I don't want to overthink it. I get that. But in this case, if you're going to farm and farm well, a quality piece is going to influence the buying behavior by educating them and streamlining their decision to choose you.
Got it. So when you say a quality piece, first let's clarify farming. It's not uncommon that I get a new coaching client and I ask them, hey, do you have a geo farm?
Yeah.
And it turns out that they think that sending just listed and just sold cards is farming, even though those cards are not going to a consistent neighborhood, right? It's just part of their sales process when they get a listing. So for our purposes, we're talking about, we're identifying an area, right? And we want to concentrate on this area, whether it's a neighborhood or a building. And we want to send quality pieces into that neighborhood. And that doesn't mean that that's not necessarily just listed and just sold cards occasionally, right? But you are referring to something that is more nuanced than that, are you not?
Right. Okay. So thank you for making me back up and explain farming. You're right. Okay. Farming is consistent nurture. And this is what I was hoping that I had shortcutted that definition by talking about peach orchards, right? Yes, take those 500-ish homes that have a 6% or better turnover rate, right? Where you're not competing against somebody who already has 60% market share.
Right.
And I say to my clients, I'm not discouraging you from being strong and tough and going against the big guns. But if you're just choosing it because it's your neighborhood and you think that that somehow makes it better, make sure that you're not fighting an uphill battle where some other farm might be perfectly great and maybe better for you. So once you've established that, I think you need to send bare bones monthly some sort of
Yes.
market update. And in my own neighborhood, no one is consistently farming, but it's a really great example for a trainer to use of the way most people farm. I get a postcard about once a year from all kinds of random agents.
Right.
And they usually either say, look at me, I'm awesome, picture, and a description of how awesome they are.
Yes.
Or it will say something like, I sold a house here a month ago. And that's about it. They don't tell me anything about the neighborhood, anything about the trends. And thank heavens I have access to the MLS and I can look it up myself. And now I know. But I think if you would educate every single person in the neighborhood about the trends, you're keeping them in the know and the piece is valuable and they may even hang on to it. My broker owner here in Colorado has farmed the same neighborhood for 30 years. And when he gets the come list me call, the reports are usually stacked up on their table. They kept them because line by line it tells them what's going on. So that's to me what farming is. But Charlie, I love your question about but should I just sold in this neighborhood? I took this great listing. Here's the answer, guys. Do the cost benefit analysis. Don't feel bossed around by me or Charlie, right? You want to mail 200 postcards at a cost of $1 a piece because you just sold a listing there and roll the dice that a single postcard will get you some sort of engagement. You choose, but be eyes wide open on that. Whereas Charlie, I think you're absolutely right. If you would double down on your mega open houses and you're just listed, just sold opportunities, in a place where you're consistent, bigger return for the money.
I agree. Right. Exactly. And I like the idea of a market report. Yeah, there's a slight lag. And just for the audience, I'm in the same situation that Amy's in, where most of the mail that I get from agents in my building are one-offs, right? There's nobody that mails in consistently, and I just, nobody's really given the effort. So when you say mail in once a month, we are also looking for a minimum commitment of how long? I'll answer that for you. We're looking for a minimum commitment of
I can't tell if we're
12 months. So we're having some technical challenges, and hopefully she's looking to log back on here. I might be able to see her again in a minute as we continue our conversation on farming. Amy, are you with us?
Yay.
Good. Hey, it's good to see you again. using the secondary device. Nice save. So I was talking to myself and saying that, when we say once a month, we're looking for, commitment for a minimum of a year. Mm-hmm. And it's important to budget that out, right? You don't want to blow all your budget in the first 3 months and then be discouraged that you didn't get a phone call. And I was also reasserting what you had said about your neighborhood, and that I get, a one-off postcard here or there, sometimes from the same agents, mm-hmm. right? But there's nothing consistent. Nobody is mailing where I live, month in and month out, year after year. And I think that those that do farming on a high level whether it's Joe Clement in Colorado Springs or Arena Babb in Alexandria, Virginia, they would all agree that that consistency over time is what is just,
Right.
super important. And even when they begin to get market share, and by market share, I don't even necessarily mean higher than 50%. You could have market share at 30%, right? And then everybody else is down at, these one-offs.
Well, 30% may be kind of high, actually.
Yeah, right.
And we can do the math on that. Yeah.
But even when that happens, they still advertise, right? It's kind of like, McDonald's, they're still doing the commercials on TV, even though everybody knows McDonald's. So
I wonder, Charlie, if doing some math would be helpful. Maybe this is theoretical.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I don't know. So my favorite example is 500 homes, nice round number.
Yep.
And by the way, maybe this is some other good math. You and I both have coaching clients. They'll say, yeah, I'm farming this area. And I'll say, how big is it? And they'll say, oh, 63 homes. And I'm like, okay, tell me more about that. Like, I don't judge until I've heard. But the thing that I have started to say is if you farm a really small area, you hopefully are putting a lot of thinking time and production time into producing a quality piece that is specific to the needs of those owners for a small return, because you just have a small target.
Right.
Now, I wouldn't say start with 5,000. That's extremely costly.
Yep.
Right? But I like that 500 to 1,000 because it's kind of worth your while. So let's say 500, and let's say a 6% turnover rate of, a turnover rate of 6%, or better, let's say 6. So that's 30 potential listings, right?
Yep.
500 times 6% is 30 potential listings in any given year on average. If you were to send a postcard, and let's say a beautiful half-page, full color, both sides postcard is $1. Okay. For 500 a month, that's 6,000 a year. If your average commission, and let's pick something super modest for your markets and say 10 grand. Okay. 10 grand is average commission.
Right.
If you sold 2 listings in your first year out of the 30, because you're just trying to warm them up to believe in you as the expert, and stats show that it may take about 8 months to find your feet. So when you say do it for a minimum of a year, I'm not quite sure why we're going to bounce at the year mark. You sort of have to look at what you're doing wrong if you're not. If you've done all your homework, if you're farming an area that was appropriate in the first place, and you're sending quality pieces, and you're not getting in, you have to look at what was the mistake that was made, right? What did you overlook? So now we're at $20,000, 2 listings, $20,000 in a single year, and it cost you 6 to be in there.
Right.
Now, yes, that overlooks cost of sale and, staging and photography, and, that's all specific to a listing. But remember that we're ramping up here. And then look at, maybe will you have 6 next year? 6 times 10, $60,000. You got 6 in. That's 10% of what you earned was spent on marketing and generating those leads. You compare that to, and I hate to say it, Zillow advertising or any sort of online advertising. Zillow, of course, recommends that if you're getting 3x 3 times, then you're good. My coaching clients who do well with Zillow and choose to stay with it are 6x. And this is a 6x example. Hopefully you can do better than 6 out of 30. I'm just not quite sure where we should assume, and not that I would put a ceiling on your effort, but what would be the sweet spot? I know an extraordinary farmer who has 12% market share and is really proud of it. He's in a high-end luxury area, and he has worked really, really, really hard at his 12% market share. So that's the type of math that I would do to decide if it's worth it. Now, you need to use a service or have an assistant. Because if you're going to say, oh, I haven't sent a postcard in a couple months, I've been busy, that's not going to work out.
Agreed. So what else beyond just mailing, right? So it's, the postcards are important, and it's harder now to meet people in person due to COVID, right? I mean, and I get that. But what about getting involved in the neighborhood if they have a neighborhood newsletter, if they have HOA meetings, especially if you live in the neighborhood, you really need to be involved. But, most people that I have witnessed being super good at this, it's not just the mailers, right? They're sponsoring events. You see their stuff at the school, right? She was the PTA president, right? There's other stuff. And sometimes I feel like people begin to farm and they start mailing in, and that's all they do, right? They're not seen in the neighborhood. They didn't get a listing, so they didn't have an open house with the ice cream truck. So, what are some other ways to, get out there in your farm beyond just relying on mail?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Charlie. And the answer is, first of all, write all this down and make a plan. Don't just try one and try another and then get exhausted from going to HOA meetings and find them a waste of your time.
Right.
Like, make a plan, commit to the time and money, and decide it's worth it, and then do it. Most of us in real estate kind of have squirrely personalities, and we like to try things once or try it twice and say, oh, I was too busy, I couldn't.
Right.
So make it a part of your master plan and commit to doing it. So that's my first recommendation. And then here are the types of things that you could include. Sponsoring the spring yard sale, right? But you have to do it well in advance. Maybe it's 6 weeks in advance of the yard sale season that you think will be a good idea. You mail to everyone. This is an additional mailing. So that $6,000 a year we had estimated for sending postcards, you now need an extra budget for for the yard sale. Let them know what participation means, add little bennies, whatever that looks like. You can provide yard sale maps, tons of signage, and guess whose signage it is? Guess whose brand is all over the neighborhood? Right. My sister used to get up at the crack of dawn and arrive at the homes of the people who offered to hold yard sales with donuts and orange juice. That was part of her ritual every year. Another thing that you can do that is not COVID deterred is to plant flags around patriotic times of year, 4th of July being the best. But you could do Memorial Day. There's different, if you missed 4th of July. So, get up super early or hire somebody else to do it and jam a flag in the front lawn of every single person. They wake up and there's American flags everywhere. Right. Just what a wow factor. Another thing that you can do is a fall dumpster, and it depends. I mean, if you're in a $2 million luxury neighborhood, maybe a dumpster in a cul-de-sac would be a little weird. But in a more middle-class neighborhood, wouldn't we all appreciate a place to bring our broken limbs in the fall? So when you have a dumpster or two, find out what a rollaway costs. I actually think I now know that you need to monitor those things. I had a friend do that, and he had a builder, some sort of a contractor, come and fill it all in one go with all the stuff. And then he got angry calls and texts from the neighbors that there was no room. You could have it co-sponsored by a lender. Those can be, and it's a pride of ownership thing. You were talking about being in the neighborhood, Charlie. So the COVID thing, you have to keep in mind, there's so many fun things that you can do when you don't have to social distance. And I think the important thing is, if you have been farming and you're struggling now, and I have a coaching client who's struggling. She used to do, farming was her main source of business. Main, not just a nice extra. That's where her business came from. And she did not pivot with the market change. She just sort of licked her wounds that the stuff that I'm good at, I can't do right now. And sort of waited for the restrictions to be lifted. And this is an important lesson for a long career. Whatever it is you're good at, if that goes away, pivot sooner than later and find a substitution, because there is one, right? Just get creative and look for, what can I substitute? And I've shared with you all the mother-son that I coach who have changed their very lavish and very frequent events to really fun pop-bys, right? Did a one-for-one substitution, and they're just staying in community with their sphere, and that's still working. So for farming, you need to look at what those substitutions could be. For her, it was huge movie events, these huge outdoor movie events that she used to do. And so now she's going to start doing drawings. She's going to have people enter answer trivia questions about favorite movies, get entered in a drawing for a fun movie event that's private for them, and just try to get engagement. Continuing to send the market updates, continuing to stay in front of them.
Yeah, I have a client who was starting a farm, and when the pandemic hit, she decided to organize block captains to check up on, elderly, single, older people. And she was just elected HOA president last week.
Oh my goodness.
So, she's going to be introducing herself to the neighborhood, those that don't know her. And what do you think the email address is that she's going to be advertising to people? Her real estate email address. You need me, get in touch with such and such, right? The HOA doesn't have email addresses for their officers.
Right.
So, it really comes down to the more involved you are in a neighborhood. And I think, if you do choose to farm in buildings or neighborhoods that you live in. It makes it that easier, right, if it's appropriate. And you can also host Zoom happy hours still. That was like all the rage, right? In April, it seemed like, right?
Yeah.
And then we've all kind of gotten used to this, and some things have reopened, but happy hours still don't really exist. So that's an idea too. So I think anytime somebody can put a name to a face, it's super important.
Charlie, I think, and I know we are right at time. Can I make one more point, or do you have to balance? Okay, so I think the most important thing to keep in mind that is often overlooked is, what is the quality of your listing system? What is the quality of your listing service? Because even as you are marketing to them, whatever it is you're sending the people in your farm month to month, the very first opportunity you get to actually host a listing, to take a listing, to promote a listing, do an extraordinary job and do it consistently. Have a wonderful listing standard that is brag-worthy, all right? Because when you think about those 30 potential listings in that farm, that's what that turnover rate predicts.
Right.
Doesn't predict is the number of referrals that you might get.
Absolutely.
Yep. Or the other types of enthusiastic engagement you could get from people who they're never going to move. They love that neighborhood, but they refer you to their daughter because they've met you at all your open houses and you're amazing. So I would say have an extraordinarily highly professional service that you provide and that you promote. And one of my coaching clients does case studies. She actually puts out pieces to the farm that detail every single thing she did, not 3 days on market, not 4 prices above, 4 offers above listing price. It's first I did this, then I did this, the staging, and then I did, and she just bullets out every single thing that it took, how much time and how many steps to make sure that it was ready for a top dollar offer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Prove your service. Make the decision easy.
Well, yeah, I mean, what level of service do we want to provide clients? And almost most importantly, when does that start? I think for a lot of agents, it starts too late, right? It starts just a bit too late. So we're running a bit over. Always good to see you, Amy. We will see you back here on Wednesday. Back over to Eyerusalem.
Thank you so much for watching. And as always, we are here to make your real estate career better.
Have a good week, everybody. Take care. Thanks.